Hi everyone, welcome to Rock Paper Suburbs. Today we're going to talk about what it's like to live in Pennsylvania, specifically the suburbs in the greater Philadelphia region. And there's so much to say about this populated and well-established area, so stick with me because we're going to be talking about the food, the culture, the people, the transportation, the housing, and a lot of other major topics that you're probably interested in. So whether you have lived here or you're thinking about moving to PA or you're just curious about what it's like to live in another part of the country, we're going to be diving into the pros and the cons of living in the Philly suburbs. And if you have lived here and you have things to add, please put them in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe because we're going to be going deeper into some of these topics later on. Now, the question of where to live feels very current right now because I've seen a lot of people take to social media to ask if I could live anywhere that I want that has all the things I'm looking for, where in the United States should I live? And a lot of people started to suggest Pennsylvania. It's a great question. And so since I live here, I thought what better way to share the experience of living here from someone who's not from here. And what you may not realize if you are not from the Philly suburbs is that yes, we have access to a large city, but we also have access to so much more. We are near Wilmington, Delaware. We're near South Jersey, which means access to the Jersey Shore. Those beaches are an hour and a half to 2 hours away. It's an hour and a half to Atlantic City. It's 3 to 3.5 hours to the Delaware beaches by car. We have access to the Poconos. And if you like camping or hiking or skiing or resorts with water parks, you can access all those things in the Poconos, which is only an hour and a half drive away. If you go a little bit west of Philly, there's Hershey, there's Lancaster. Even if you've never been here, I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of Lancaster and Amish country, Hershey Park. We also have access to Reading, PA. And in addition, we're not far from the Lehigh Valley. So there is a whole collection of cities there, including Allentown, Easton, Bethlehem, Nazareth. So whether your interests are the outdoors or restaurants or history or sports, there's something here for everybody. And I have kids, so it's really important to stay busy and to have family outings. So this has been a great place for our family to be super active. So I'm going to get more into the opportunities of things to do with a family as we go along. And keep in mind that being in Philly means that you have access to many other large cities. I can get to New York City from my house within 2 hours, and Washington, D.C. is 3.5 hours by car, and I've explored both New York and DC with my kids. And on the way home, they'll be complaining, "Oh, I'm so tired, are we home yet?" And I've tried to explain, you guys are so close to these major cities. People come from across the globe to visit some of these places. So I hope as they get older, they'll grow an appreciation for how much access they have to some major cities on the East Coast by living here. First, I'm going to talk about things to do. I know a lot of people are familiar with the historic aspects of Philadelphia, and there is a lot of history in Philly, and there are lots of museums and restaurants. Here, I'm going to talk specifically about things to do in the suburbs because there is a lot. There is a lot to do in the suburbs that's unique to the area. There are some things to do where there are only a couple locations in the whole country. We have a Legoland experience. We can easily get to Crayola experience, or if you like to sample ice cream or iced tea, the Turkey Hill experience is a really fun place to go with kids. And I've heard we're getting a Netflix house and an Eataly at King of Prussia Mall. I'm super excited about Eataly because I've been to the one in New York, but we don't have one here, so I am really looking forward to having one close by. And something else that's unique to this region is that because it's so well established, there have been so many residents who have left their mark, and that means more things to do and more places to visit. I'll just give you quickly a few examples. You can go to the Audubon Center and learn about birds, and there are some hands-on activities for children at the former home of John James Audubon. There's also the Pearl Buck House in where else? Bucks County. So if you like either literature or if you simply love personal stories about famous people, the Pearl Buck House is a beautiful and unique property to visit. From this area, you can also easily access Windsor Tour, which is an enormous mansion and estate of the DuPont family. And in that same area is the Brandywine River Museum, which features the artwork of the Wyeths. So if you love art, that is a great small museum to visit. So no matter where in the Philly suburbs you live on the Pennsylvania side, if you are willing to drive half an hour or an hour and a half. We have longwood gardens and multiple arboretums. We have access to multiple children's museums in the region, factory tours. We have access to Amish country with train rides, theaters, and one of our favorite theaters, Sight and Sound Theater, where they bring live animals onto the stage. And there are multiple amusement parks in the area, including Sesame Place, but there's so many other amusement parks in the area. And we also have unique attractions like Treehouse World in Chester County. And keep in mind, many attractions that have the word Philadelphia in the title are not actually in Philly. Many of them are in the suburbs. Philadelphia Folk Festival, suburbs. Philadelphia Premium Outlets, suburbs. So now let's dive into one of the most interesting aspects of living anywhere, which is the culture. Pennsylvania cities are known for being tough working class cities, and that inevitably trickles over into the suburbs. In the Philly area, people are probably not going to be sugary sweet, but people are generally friendly and neighborly. You'll definitely want to be prepared for a little bit of sarcasm. Or a lot of sarcasm. Sarcasm is definitely something that you'll want to understand if you live here. And if I could describe my immediate area, I would say it's composed primarily of white-collar people who have blue-collar sensibilities. On the whole, this is not an area where people get dressed up day to day. We're not fancy. There are pockets that are, but I'm speaking broadly. And I mean that in the best possible way. So I'll give you a couple examples to illustrate the pros and cons of that. A pro is that people tend to be down to earth, and if you're a woman, you don't have to worry about getting really dressed up. You're free to run to the grocery store without doing your hair and makeup. And one year on Halloween, I remember there was a storm coming and it was going to rain. So the question came up, should we move Halloween to a different date? And it was universal across my neighborhood. We are not moving Halloween. These kids can trick or treat in the rain just like we did. Parents were saying, you think our parents moved Halloween for us? So it's that kind of a culture. A con is that if you're from another area and you're used to there being a lot of emphasis on culture, history, the arts, that is not something that's that important to many people who are from the area. So there is so much to do in terms of culture and the arts and history in the region. But because I think a lot of people are from here, the opportunity sort of gets lost on them because sometimes they can take it for granted. And this area is amazing for stuff like that. There's so much history. As you drive around, there are all these old houses that claim George Washington slept here. It almost becomes a little bit of a meme when you live here full time. But speaking of culture, and this is both a pro and a con, people who live in the Philly area tends to be from the Philly area. People do generally stay in the area if they were born and raised here. It actually does point to some things that are positive. One is that people have everything they need here, so they feel like they don't have to leave. Two is that there are jobs that keep people here. And three, there are a ton of colleges in PA. So no matter what type of school you're looking for, there is an opportunity to go to college and then get a job once you graduate in this area. For example, a lot of people in my neighborhood work for the pharmaceutical industry in one way or another. I have asked people so many times, are you from the area? And they'll say something like, oh no, I'm not from here. I'm from Norristown. Well, Norristown's like 20 minutes from here. Like if you have friends in Philly and they come out to visit you in the suburbs, they're checking the tire pressure, they're packing snacks, they consider it to be a really long way. The downside of this aspect of the Philly culture is that if you're not from here, it may be a little more slow going to make friends than moving to some other cities. I was at an evening social event at church this past year, and there were 10 or 12 of us there. And I realized as everyone went around the room saying where they went to high school that I was the only person in the room who was not from the Philly suburbs. So that can be a bit of an impediment if you're new to the area and you're trying to make friends, because people whose lives are established here, they have their families here and they often have the friends that they grew up with. And being more reserved is generally part of Pennsylvania culture compared to some other parts of the country. One time, and this is actually a story where I was in Philly itself, I was in line waiting for cheesesteaks at Reading Terminal Market, and the lady next to me struck up this big friendly conversation. I thought, wow, this woman is really friendly and chatty. Not in a bad way. I just wasn't expecting it. And then at the end of the conversation, she mentioned, oh, I'm from Minnesota. Now, a big draw to living here that I think is appealing to a lot of people is that we have all 4 seasons. So if weather is something that you care about, you should know that Philly gets spring, summer, fall, and winter. Sometime in the year you'll be wearing shorts, and sometime in the year you'll be bundled up in a parka. Most winters we do get some snow, but it's good to know that none of our weather events are really that extreme. We don't have the blistering hot summers and the freezing cold winter temperatures that some parts of the country get hit with. It does get hot in summer and it does get cold in winter, but I will say that having all 4 seasons does keep things interesting. And if you like to take advantage of the opportunity to be outside, we have tons of parks and trails and playgrounds. This area has more parks and more trails than anywhere else that I have lived. Every year, my kids make a playground bucket list over summer vacation, and it actually takes us a long time to work our way through the bucket list because there are so many great playgrounds in the area. And if you like scenic beauty, a place like Valley Forge is a beautiful place to go in the fall when the leaves change color. And we have the Schuylkill River Trail, which goes from Montgomery County all the way into Philly. That connects to the Perkiomen Trail. I know it's hard to say these words, Schuylkill, Perkiomen. And I have heard that Chester County is going to be adding a section, and that eventually there will be a 60-mile trail that goes from Reading to Philly. All right, this is a fun one. If you like to eat, the food is great in this region. We have everything from high-end restaurants to really good pizzerias to some really great mom and pop restaurants. And the wonderful thing about this being such an established region is that people tend to be very supportive of their local businesses, and that includes a lot of the food joints. I have a little helper here. He sees what I have in my hands. If somebody asks you, where do you get those hoagies? They might be from Wawa. I am not someone who typically gets food at rest stops. Wawa is the only rest stop where I'll get food. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with help, so we'll see how this goes. We were talking about food. If someone offers you a tomato pie, definitely give it a try. You might like it. If you're wondering, do regular people who live here actually eat cheesesteaks and hoagies? Yes, we do. And if you're out at basically any social event, we like pretzels. Yes, we do. Soft pretzels are big here. And don't forget the water ice, or as they say here, the water ice. It is such a part of the culture that when you go to the hospital to have a baby, they show you where the refrigerator is in the maternity ward with the expectation that you will be bringing water ice with you. If you're interested in adult beverages, I'm going to give you a really honest assessment here. Pennsylvania is not known for its wines. However, there are some really distinctive distilleries here, and we have lots of breweries. I always have trouble saying that word, breweries. If you go to a place like Phoenixville, it's a really cute downtown with lots of bars and restaurants, and I have heard it's the densest concentration of breweries per square foot. And did I mention sports? How could I forget? It goes without saying, we're outside of a major city. We have all the professional sports, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and there are a lot of colleges in the region. So if you like college sports, we have all of those too. Sports are such a big part of the region. I'm gonna leave most of that for another day because there's so much that could be said about Philly sports. Sports are like religion here. I actually had a friend who went to college in the Philly area. She was from another part of the country and she could not believe how big sports were on the East Coast. And if going, I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sure you can. If going to professional sports is not quite for you. We also have minor league teams, and those games are really fun. If you are someone who's not into sports, it might seem like a con instead of a pro how big sports are in Philly, because watching sports is how a lot of people spend their time, and talking about sports is going to be a huge topic of conversation no matter who you're with, where you are, or what you're doing. Now, when it comes to the topic of healthcare, again, that is such a big topic. I can't address all of that just in this one video. Suffice it to say, we have major healthcare systems in the area because we are near so many major cities. But if you have a family, I would like to specifically highlight that we have access to really good children's hospitals, the most well-known being Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, or CHOP. And one thing that you may not realize is that CHOP has satellite locations throughout the suburbs. And so my kids have been able to get appointments at a CHOP facility only 20 minutes from our house. And that facility includes a pediatric ER. So if it's important to you to not just be near a hospital, but to be near a really high quality pediatric ER, you can still have access to the CHOP medical professionals if you're out in the suburbs. And if housing is something that's important to you, this is actually a really interesting area to live because there is a wide range of housing available, and some of the architecture is older and very interesting. The area that I live in happens to have more new construction, so I live in a newer style house. It's sort of a cross between a farmhouse and a contemporary. I sometimes feel like my house doesn't really know what style it wants to be. But when we bought the house, when my sister saw a picture of it, she said, "What I thought your house was gonna look like is what your house looks like. It's what you think of in terms of typical Pennsylvania from the outside. It's got a front porch, it's got the faux stone on the front." But I know people who live in 1800s farmhouses that are beautiful and authentic. I have one friend in Bucks County. Her house has hidden staircases and lots of fireplaces. It's a really cool property. I know people who live in townhouses. I know people who have small farms and they raise chickens and goats. So there really is a range here. And there are many parts of the region that have beautiful, unique homes that are one of a kind. And if you're looking for downtowns, there are some really nice downtown areas. But the best way to describe it is that the region is peppered with some walkable downtowns, filled in largely by a lot of subdivisions, and those do require you to have a car. And I'll get to the roads in a minute, but let me warn you first that whether you are driving or walking or running, we have so many hills here. If you're from somewhere where everything is flat, be prepared for a little bit of a shock. One day it had snowed and my husband had to go to work, and he was driving up the hill away from our house, and then he said when he got to the top, he just started sliding backwards. Fortunately, we're not a place that gets a ton of snow and ice most winters, but it is a consideration. And if gardening is one of your hobbies, I just want to warn you, we don't have great soil here. My grandparents are from New England. They lived on Cape Cod where there were these lush gardens and flowers everywhere in the summer, and our soil is more clay-like, and so it is difficult to work with. And if you want to know about amenities, I'm just going to keep it really simple by saying if you're in any of the suburbs, you're outside a major city and it's populated and you have all the things that you need for daily living. So within 5 to 10 minutes of my house, we have grocery stores, the doctor, the eye doctor, the dentist, the big box stores, gyms, the YMCA, community pool, and the obvious forms of entertainment that you would expect, especially if you have a family. Arcades, bowling alley, mini golf, old-timey ice cream shop, the movies, movie tavern, and a place that we frequent often, so it's a good thing it's 5 minutes from home, urgent care. And if you enjoy holidays, a time when Pennsylvania really shines is Christmas. It's even in a song, Pennsylvania and some homemade pumpkin pie. But it's true, within several minutes of our house, there are multiple Christmas tree farms, and we always, and by we, I mean my husband, always cuts down a fresh Christmas tree from the Christmas tree farm. And there are so many places that have awesome Christmas light displays and Christmas decorations. The zoos, the amusement parks, the always charming peddlers Fiddler's Village and what I consider to be the crown jewel of the Philly suburbs, Longwood Gardens. Now, if you have kids, you're probably really curious about education. The suburbs outside Philly really do have a lot of good school districts. And in addition to public school, there are many other options. There are some really expensive private schools, and there are also some smaller private schools that are much more moderately priced. I've known people who have homeschooled. I've known people who have done cyber school. I've known people who send their kids to schools that offer a classical education. Like I said, we're outside of a major city. There are so many education options. And if you're interested in colleges in the area, or you have a child or another family member who's interested in colleges in the area, we have a wide range of colleges and universities. You have Ivy League, you have small liberal arts colleges, engineering programs, state schools with a large array of majors. It just depends what you're looking for, but there are so many university and college options in the area. Now, on the topic of diversity, while the city of Philadelphia is a very diverse place, are the suburbs diverse? Honestly, not really, at least not the majority of them. And if you just look up the different townships and boroughs and look at the statistics, you'll see what I mean. You should know that many of the suburbs do require you to be able to get around by car. There is an extensive network of public transportation. The transit authority here is called SEPTA, and they have a network of buses and trains. And while not every town has regional rail, many of the older townships and boroughs do have access to one of the many regional rail lines in the area, which will give you access to Philly. Now, if you have a car, you're going to want to be aware that in honor of the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, which happened in Philadelphia, the highways around here all end in 76. It's great for honoring history, not so great if you're trying to learn the roads. So you might take 476 to 76 to 676 and 276 maybe mixed into the directions as well. So just be forewarned, it can get a little confusing. And the roads do get congested, and 76 is the major highway that runs in and out of Philly, and it's 2 lanes each way. It's built in the side of a mountain. Sometimes I can drive into Philly without any traffic at all, but there is often traffic, and I've even gotten to traffic on 76 late at night. In terms of traffic on the local roads, it kind of depends where you live. If you live in one of the newer suburbs, the traffic isn't too bad. But if you live in one of the older, more established neighborhoods, some of the townships do get pretty congested. And I'm gonna have to be really honest, the roads here kind of stink. Lots of potholes, and construction projects seem to never really end. The highway that's closest to my house has had a Jersey barrier up along the side of the highway for the last 12 years. And the end to that project seems to be nowhere in sight. And infrastructure in general is not really what PA is known for. We have a friend who came out to visit us, and he laughed that a lot of restaurants will advertise that they have Wi-Fi, like it's this cool new thing. And that does point to the overall culture here. I would not say that the Philly region is especially techie. We're not a group as a whole that's pushing boundaries. As a whole, I wouldn't say that we're a really edgy crowd or a really hippie crowd. And if there's a quirk that I want to warn you about living here, it's that nobody really actually knows where they live. Often your mailing address and your physical address are 2 different things. So I live in one township, but my mailing address is a post office in a neighboring borough. And if you ask me to explain the difference between all the different townships and boroughs, to be honest, I don't really understand it, and I've lived here a while. So overall, the Pennsylvania suburbs around Philly feel very established and have lots of history. And if you want a family home where you get all 4 seasons and access to lots of activities, this could be a great place for you to live. And I have just scraped the surface with this video. So if you have other topics that you're curious about, or if you have things to add because maybe you've lived in the area, please put them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can stay up to date with everything we're going to be talking about here. Or even if you're in the area in the future on vacation, I hope you have a wonderful time.